All right, let's just get the shit on the road because I know everybody. So this was a podcast I wanted to do for a long time. Took me a while to kind of get stuff together and get you know good people together. That's the hardest part because to have a discussion like this, you can't have shit people. In for lack of a better term, in the so before I start for everyone listening. I just want to get we have our Fox News regular Chris Bonfoco down in the right hand corner. Uh, uh, Professor Jason McDonald has also done this before, and are new to our panel, Linda Pilat. Also, the unique thing about everyone here is everyone's a small business owner. So,
Yeah.
for the topics that we're going to be discussing, it's kind of really relevant to everybody here. Um, and about this, and like I wanted to do this podcast earlier, but full disclosure, all the shit that was going on, I had to take a break from it
Yeah.
for a good month because it was, I mean, for most Canadians who are actually paying attention to what's going on, the last 2 years have not been very peachy to be a Canadian citizen, a
Hmm.
concerned Canadian citizen, put it that way, because some people don't give a shit.
Mm.
Um, but I mean, there's so much things to talk about, and we have four different unique viewpoints. But I think the first thing that would be on the mind is like over the last 2 years of the COVID, and COVID aside, I think this is out of COVID now. Is the government overreach that has been that's been taken and for some perceived, right? Because some people are on the other side of the fence of this. So I wanted to like kick off the conversation. Maybe Linda can start off. Like, why do some people you think that the government hasn't overreached and has been acting in the best interest of people? Like, why is that on the other side of the discussion, rather than everyone being on board with, oh yeah, the government's been overreaching.
Well, I mean, I think it has to do with just not wanting to see or just not being able to see. I sometimes I think it's one and sometimes I think it's the other. I don't think people are meant to see it if they're not meant to see it because you'll have a conversation with them and it's almost like they're purposely not trying to understand, but I don't think that's what it is. I just think that they're not meant to see it because this is like a conditioning that's always been. We've always been subject to what the system tells us is right or wrong. Like we're told what the culture is, we're told what the norm is, and I think people just follow because they think the government doesn't have bad intentions. Like they ask, why would the government do this to me, or like they're acting in our best interests, and they believe it because that's what they're told basically, and they're not thinking about it. It's like before I was like more conservative minded, I was liberal, and to me that means like you're just not paying attention, you're not looking for answers, you're not questioning the system, you just have best intentions, and I think these people do have really good intentions. I just don't think they know what they're doing, and I
Yeah.
don't think they're consciously aware of what's going on
Do you
basically.
like Professor J? Because I know you have some experience in education. Do you think that this kind of was in the works for the last 10 years plus, like putting people in the education system to be more of a followers than leaders? Uh,
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of valid literature about that. I'm not so much into education, but I think I try to educate myself. I'm more on the social work, um, service providing, law enforcement side. So I work more with the huggy, liberal minded, progressive minded people. I work in the field with people like that. But like my friend Linda was mentioning, I think that to some degree we took for granted that the system that we live in was a free system. And when I say free, I mean it was the kind of system where everybody had a say, everybody could bring their ideas to the table, everybody's voice was heard. And I think over the last 2 years, we found out that it wasn't like that at all.
Yeah.
And it's never been like that. But we were violently awoken to the fact that at any time, I can only speak for this country. I have friends in the U.S. who have a different perspective. But in this country, at any time the government feels as though they can do something, they will do it. And because our memories as Canadians is very short, and so they're banking on the fact that if they do it at the right time in the election cycle, you will forget about the pain you went through prior to that coming election, and throw a bunch of goodies at you to kind of make you feel like, okay, well, it all worked out in the sauce, right? It worked out in the end, though. You got everything back.
Yeah.
I know the Liberals did that after 10 or so years of just messing everything up. I'm talking about from McGuinty to Wynne. Prior to them, it was, I believe it was the Conservatives, and prior to them was the NDP, if I'm right.
Yeah.
In Ontario.
It was Conservative. It was NDP, then it was Conservative. You're talking about Ontario?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Bob Ray, and then it was
Harris. Mike Harris.
Harris,
and then it was Dalton.
Then it was McGuinty. Right?
Yeah. And I think that we watched as over that period of time, that was about a 15 to 20 year period where people that we were electing into positions of power to make decisions for us as a province, they were constantly choosing not the people's will, but the will of whoever paid for them to get into office, right? And so I think now people have woken up to that. I think now, too, there's more small business owners. And so, when you are trying to run a business, and you see the government literally interfering at every facet of it, like making it harder for you to do what you're trying to do, and still demanding from you a lot just to run your business, I think that opened up people's eyes as well, right? A lot of us are independent contractors or have small businesses, have mom and pop shops. And so these 2 years really showed us like, oh, wait a minute, these guys aren't trying to help us. These guys are just trying to put as much clamps on us as possible and then shift the blame for everything
back onto the people.
Inabilities. Yeah.
Now, Chris, bringing on to the point where Jason just said, do you think that it's 100% like the people who are funding the campaigns are kind of almost making the decisions now, as opposed to the actual politicians? Yeah,
they're controlled, but the oligarch controls them. I don't think that everyone in government it has nefarious intent. I believe there's good people, but there's bad players. And what's happening is, in anything, you follow the money, right? So we're getting a Great Caribbean downpour right now. It's going to get loud in here. So, yeah, what's happening with these campaigns is politicians. What is the job of a politician? I'll talk about. I'm a libertarian, so I don't like government to begin with. All right. So a politician's job is to get reelected, and that's it. Right? There's no such thing as unselfish acts. I've said that on this show before. So when these people,
hi Blaine.
Oh, he just saw Blaine walk through the bag. Blaine's waving at you. So the big sponsors of these candidates, they are in control. Like, how are you supposed to accept money from, let's say, Pfizer?
Yeah.
And then not back them up in your campaign? You can't do that. That's going to be a conflict of interest. So why is, say, Pfizer then sponsoring your campaign? What is the intent of that? And since when is it okay for business oligarch to back, especially when it comes to media, backing political, to back politicians?
Yeah.
Since when is that okay? Right? Like a campaign is supposed to be grassroots, right? And as government gets bigger and bigger and bigger, the oligarch is getting bigger and bigger behind them. So when you ask the question is, are the people pulling the strings in charge? I think absolutely. However, individual politicians have the opportunity to sway from that narrative, but do they really? Right? What happens to a liberal politician or a conservative politician or an NDP politician in Canada if they vote against the party line? What's even the purpose?
Yeah.
Right? What's even the purpose? Like I'm in the conservative cabinet, but I disagree with this because my constituents like I'm from Welland.
Yeah.
Welland had Peter Cormos for the longest time. I do not agree with Peter Cormos in any way, shape, or form. However, he was good for Welland. I would have voted for Peter Cormos because he fought for Welland. He went against the NDP all the time. He was NDP and he went against them all the time. He represented Welland, right? But you get kicked out of the party for that stuff.
Yeah.
Right. The only reason he didn't get booted out of the party is because the party got destroyed when Bob Rae left.
Well, like if you look at the current Conservative Party, especially in Ontario, which I think is a complete mess, to be honest with you, when Doug Ford started doing things, a lot of his MPs started speaking out against him. And those are the same MPs now who are in turn running for the Conservative leadership federally. And some of them are even like I know there's an MP out in Kingston, Randy Hillard, who was very vocal during the whole thing. Now he's under investigation for like 9 criminal charges for his his quote quote involvement with the Freedom Convoy, but like it wasn't even, the charges are pretty much bogus in my opinion. So I mean, it's very evident what you're saying is true. The minute you speak out against it, like Doug Ford was axing people, like you're not in the caucus anymore. So your political career almost depends on whether you're willing to go along instead of representing the people in your area or your constituents, right?
Like I said, if you don't represent the party, you get kicked out. Now your job as a politician is to get reelected. So if I'm a conservative politician in a conservative area and I speak out against the government because I'm representing my constituents and I get kicked out, well, what happens in the next election cycle? I don't have the money in order to run a proper campaign. And whomever the conservative rep is, the people look at it. Now, this was an argument my father made with me in regard to Peter Cormos, was that Welland federally and provincially would always vote NDP. And other than Bob Rae time, Welland never has any representation in the government because NDP is weak federally and historically they're weak provincially. Yeah. And so if you have a rep from the party that has no power, you have no say. Your entire constituency is blank.
Yeah. And then going back to the mainstream media thing, I want to ask Linda, do you think that like if I was to evaluate let's take the news networks, right? Let's go as CP24, the constant propaganda 24. That's what I call them because that's right. CTV. If we trace back to where they're all owned by Bell, right? And then if we go back into the other news networks, they're owned by Rogers. Then we have the CBC. I mean, going back to what we were just saying, do you think that those are really the things that are pulling the strings right now in terms of how the narratives are going in society?
I think everything is connected, and like you guys are talking about all these politicians, I recently started to know a few of them or whatever, not to know them personally, but I mean to kind of listen to what they're all saying and stuff like that. I don't think they have any power. I think who's really in power are the billionaires of the world. I think they've always been like the Rockefellers or Pfizer, owned by BlackRock and Vanguard. They also own the media outlets.
Yeah.
All the politicians that are put into place, I think it's all fake. I think Trudeau being elected is fake. I think Biden being elected is fake. I think this war is fake. I just think everything is fake. Like I honestly do. Like I think this is all orchestrated by people who have real power. Before we had lobbying for corporations are now running the world. It's not governments. Like, governments can't do anything. There's people with way more power than Trudeau, people with way more power than Biden. Like, the powers of the world is not in the politicians' hands. I just don't believe it anymore.
Well, and I think you're right. If you a good example is, let's take a look at Florida in the U.S. right now, right? With the don't say, I don't understand the phrase of it. Don't say gay bill. It's stupid.
Don't say gay. Yeah.
Yeah, that is just a way to twist.
It's pejorative.
It's a way to twist people's thinking into the.
Yeah.
But like, for those who don't know what the hell it is, basically it's a bill that DeSantis, who I think is a gangster, by the way, I like that guy a lot, put into play that you can't teach people or kids from kindergarten to grades 3 anything about sexual gender orientation, etc., which I completely agree. I have young kids. I know, Chris does too, and so does Jay. Like, I don't want my kid learning any of that from K to 3, right? That's my. So I agree with the bill, but then let's look at who's pushing back against it. Well, it's not necessarily the LGBT, whatever the fuck other letters there are, right? I don't know them, but it's Disney.
Wow.
It's fucking Disney. It's Walt Disney. Walt Disney has now taken a position where they are saying, we are going to push back against a piece of law.
But Disney is in the World Economic Forum as well, aren't they?
Well, I would put money on it. But my point being is, why is a corporation getting involved in lawmaking? They're not. Sorry, go ahead, Jay.
Can I throw my hand in there?
Yeah.
This is not a new thing. This is historical.
Yeah,
Hudson's Bay Company, one of the oldest corporations in Canada. They're the company that helped establish Canada as a nation. I believe
a trading company.
Yeah, right. So you have to look at it like, it has always been the case that people with capital run things. The reason being, if there's no money to start things, there's no money to pay for advertisement, if there's no money to get things done, get the ball rolling, to grease the wheel, then nothing happens. Like you said, you mentioned politicians. The system of government that we have is designed to give you, the person, the everyday person, the feeling that what you say and what you think matters, right? But really and truly, if all of us were put in positions of power and authority, because we know that that's always fleeting and that changes as soon as the government comes in, they bring in some other sets of rules. The best way to manage that is to stack the deck. That's why most people, most organizations, most corporations, they just put money on both piles, right?
Yeah.
They don't necessarily only contribute to the Liberal, NDP, or Conservative. They contribute to all, right? Because if you have everybody in your pocket, it doesn't matter who becomes the running government, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just historically been that way. Like, it's not. I don't look at it like it's a conspiracy or fake. War has always been about potential for money, commerce, the ability to keep money and keep my country from being overrun and being controlled, having people get my assets or my resources, right? And so you said war is fake and stuff like that. I kind of see your point, but I also see that there's just a historic precedent for all these things have always worked this way. And it's only really in the modern age where we have been given, probably in the last 200 years, we've been given this idea that what we want matters and what we say matters, especially us in this part of the world, right? In North America, the Western Hemisphere, we really believe, hey, we have a say, we control what our government does, and then our government makes these other people do these things. When you think about it, like, we sold the 407 to a corporation after we built it, right?
Yeah.
And so now, what we built with our tax dollars, we now have to pay into at some of the craziest rates.
Just to use.
Just to use it. And then if we don't pay our 407 bill, our government comes after us to now make sure that private organization that owns it now or has leased it or however you want, however it worked out, it's
a private corporation in Spain. So if a company in Spain doesn't get paid their money, the Canadian government can take your license away.
Right. So now our livelihood is being affected by a corporation who bought something for pennies on the dollar that our tax dollars built, right? And it's just like this shuffle game, right? And so that wasn't necessarily like a new thing. It's kind of always been that way.
Yeah, I understand.
Well, I think there's a new paradigm though. Like you're on the right track, Jay. Like I agree with you that it's always kind of been these oligarchs taking care of things. But you said something really key in there, and it was about how they'll say like my country, like how I can stop my country from being overrun. Unfortunately, that doesn't exist anymore with these oligarchs. They have become so powerful, and because the world has become so interconnected, that these oligarchs, the oligarchs that are in charge of everything, like Linda brought up, BlackRock, right? These companies have more money than any company in the history of the world has ever had. The East India Trading Company, as huge as it was during the British Empire, is nothing compared to these organizations.
I agree.
And now there's no concern anymore for the sovereignty of the individual or the sovereignty of individual nations. These corporations who are funding everything, and you're right, they are funding all three parties. They're funding both the Democrats and the Republicans. Like in the United States, the establishment Republicans like Lindsey Graham and what's his face, buddy, the guy with the.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, with the glasses.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, I know his name.
Mitch McConnell. Mitch
McConnell. There you go. Turtle Mitch. So these people, they have no concern with their constituents. They have no concern with the people. The corporations have no concern. It's all about their wealth and control. I mean, World War II was funded on both sides by the same people, right? And, so I think like you're right. Like that's how it's always been. I think it's just we're in an extreme situation at this point where it's almost like a do or die situation for people because, and you said in the West that we've had this feeling that we do control our governments. And you can't convince me that the United States Constitution is the most brilliant document ever written, right? And the entire way that they have their government set up with that constitution, the checks and the balances are absolutely incredible. And the fact that they aren't abiding by it, that does take away. I mean, the last bastion of sovereignty for the individual truly is the United States. And if the United States goes down, the only solution is the countries are too big, that everything has to be broken up and made small if the individual is ever going to have sovereignty again.
Yeah.
And, that's an interesting point. I mean, I see your point.
Quebec wanted to be free for a while. Let's give it to them.
No, well, I don't think. I think you're right about the Declaration of Independence and the American Constitution being some of the greatest documents for the aspirational ideas of the human individual right powers. But I know that they've always fallen short of that. It's an aspirational document because pretty much as soon as they put it into place, they found ways to limit with amendments and limit the individual's rights. And then
right, but who was responsible for that, right? It was the oligarchs who were paying
Exactly. So it's like and the men who wrote it would be considered in this day oligarchs, right?
Yeah. Or racist and misogynist and fringe minorities.
I won't judge them. I won't judge them by our standards this time because they were men of their time.
Thank you, Jay. That's presentism, right? People suffer presentism. Right?
Yeah. I mean, they were men of their time. Yeah. They wouldn't get elected. Well, I mean, who knows? They might not get elected today, right? And they were misogynists. They were racist. They were probably terrible people to certain kinds of people. but we'll move that aside. They will be considered to be oligarchs now, right? Because there are men of power, men of wealth, men of influence. That's why they were able to have the leisure to sit down there and create these documents, right? And they were able to divide up the country because they were the people who had the means to do it, right? And, you know, I do think we are seeing the decline of the U.S. in our time. And I don't know who's going to replace it, right? I think it's going to be an amalgamation of different countries and stuff. But I'm not really worried because, like I'm kind of with Linda in the sense that, like, it's not really someone else will just pick the game up. It's like when Michael Jordan left the league, in came LeBron. You know what I mean?
Well,
I'm saying came Kobe, but anyway.
Sorry. You know what? You're right.
Who's that person going to be? That's what I want to know. Who's that person going to be? Is it going to be Elon Musk or something? Because I don't trust him either.
No. Well,
you know, everyone, he's talking, he's putting his nose in politics, and he has his say, and he's doing things like buying Twitter because, you know, the First Amendment, and he's also developing shit like Neuralink.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Well, exactly. Like, and I'm actually a huge. I have his fucking book right there. I can see it. I'm a huge fan of the guy in terms of his business acumen and where he's come, but it's hard to completely jump on board with him, like kind of Linda said, where he's doing these things where he's buying Twitter because we know that he has that free speech kind of point to him where he encourages that. But then with the technology that he's developing as well, that technology that technology inherently reduces freedom and individual sovereignty and rights as well because of the nature of how that technology works, right? And one of the things that I pay attention to, and a lot of people don't, if you've ever been awake at fucking 4:30 a.m. and looking at
the that time every day, man. I wake up at 4.
Okay, fuck off. Fuck off. All right,
I don't even need an alarm.
Okay, if you ever awake at 4:30 a.m. and you look at pre-market before the stock market opens, this is hours and hours and hours before the stock market opens. There are multiple times where I've been up because I got to get up early, and I look at it, and you have things that are down 7, 8, 9%. You're like, who in the fuck is trading stocks at that time of morning? And it's not the retail investor. It's not me. It's not you, because I'm not allowed. My accounts don't allow me to trade after hours or pre-market or that kind of things. Those are computer digitized machines by the exact same companies that Linda was talking about. Vanguard, BlackRock, all of those guys they have all these algorithms set, ready to go, and they're changing money. And the fucked up part about that is, like, you'll open your app, a regular person wakes up maybe like 8 o'clock or 6, open it, freak out that they're about to lose all their fucking money when the market opens, and they'll make an impulsive decision to do something like sell or whatever, and 9:30 the market opens, the thing is back in the green, up 10%, right? And so when we talk about control, who's actually controlling the things? When you look at something as simple as a day-to-day stock market, 5 days a week, that happens every fucking day. I can guarantee every day you look at there's that manipulation of regular people like us before we're even allowed to engage in that kind of conversation. You know what I mean?
But I think there's something really important, because I think that what these last 2 years have shown me is that money is not real. No, when I say not real, it's not based on.
Not backed up by gold. It's just paper.
Right. Yeah, that too. It's not. It's fiat. It's paper. It's whatever.
Backed up by the U.S. military. That's
there we go. Whatever they say it is, that's what it is. I mean, to some degree, I was listening to a lecture about cryptocurrency, and a gentleman who was talking about the need for it and the validness of it was making a really good argument. And he pretty much talked about the fact that nothing is worth anything unless it's a rare resource that cannot be duplicated and repeated, and right? And so I sat there and I thought to myself, like, if anything, we saw that over the last 2 years. We saw our government come to us and say, hey, we want you to stay home. Oh, don't worry. Don't worry. You're not going to go broke. You're not going to lose your house. Don't worry. We're going to give you money to keep you at home. Prior to that, there was like a buzzword called universal income, right? It was buzzing around intellectual circles, the university circle. We need universal income. We need universal income. People are like, no, it's no way. It's too expensive. We can't do it. All of a sudden, we want you to stay home. We're going to give you universal income. And businesses, guess what? We're going to give you some money too. Don't feel like we left you out.
Oh, we weren't giving them. We were told we can get a loan.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. It wasn't. It was a loan. Here's $60,000, and you only got to pay back $40,000. So wow, we got money from the government. Wow, we can keep our thing afloat. Yeah. Don't worry about it.
I told them to go fuck themselves. I did, and called them chicken hawks.
Right, there you go. Right, but see, what we saw over the 2 years was everything that we said, everything people asked for. They were like, no way, it's too expensive. All of a sudden, it was given to us to control our behavior. We don't want you to go outside. We don't want you to leave. We don't want you to go to work. We don't want you to be. Just stay home. We'll give you money to stay home. Everyone's like, money to stay home? Okay, got Netflix. I got all the social media I need. Right, I stay in my house. We told landlords, you can't kick people out. We told landlords, you can't raise rent. Right? We told people who are depending on the ebb and flow of an economy, hold on and wait. And the people who we didn't want to wild out, go crazy, and start robbing and burning stuff down, we told them, don't worry, we're going to give you enough money to keep you at home and cause you not to go crazy. I work in law enforcement.
Everything else, they give you these little rewards, these little morsels every once in a while.
Right.
Who was it? Some sort of was it Stalin or something? I think he did something violent to a bird, and then he put out little pellets for it to eat, and it followed behind. He said, as long as you give them a little bit of crumbs, they forget what you did to them.
Yeah,
that's what they're doing to us.
Exactly, because I work in law enforcement, and I can tell you, crime was not up during those 2 years. It was not up. It was up because we knew people were staying home. The people who would normally be feeling like, I'm desperate, I need to rob somebody because I lost my job and my kids are home. It's like, no, don't worry, stay home. And so where was that money coming from that they were printing to put into the checks and send out to people? Where was that money coming from for the loans that they were giving out to these businesses?
It's coming from it's coming from my kids and your kids and Chris's child's, and it's coming from their futures.
It's coming from a future that we don't know if it'll ever be paid back, right? Because you start talking about trillions, there's no Scrooge McDuck with a room with $1 trillion. It's just numbers in a computer, right?
Yeah.
And so to me, maybe I'm pessimistic, but when I watched it, I was like, oh, wait a minute. This whole money game thing is really fake. It's not real. It's like...
The worst part about it is how the media has covered it too. I don't know. I don't follow a lot of Canadian media right now, but I try to keep up to date. But when they talk about how much money, the Biden inflation, right, how much the inflation is in the United States, with how much because he did all those omnibus packages that they did in the U.S. As bad as that looks, Canada is like 5 times worse.
Yeah.
Canada printed so much more money. And you guys made an interesting point when you're talking about money, what is it? Are you guys familiar with what's going on with the Russian ruble right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Right. So they put in these sanctions on the Russians, and then Putin just decided, go fuck yourself. You want my oil? They're the biggest oil producers in the world. You want my oil? You got to buy rubles.
Yeah.
What's happened? All the things that the ruble dropped 70% in those first couple of days, it's right back to where it was. Why? Because it's backed by gold.
Yeah.
And so you can't knock it off. And just one other point I want to make too, and Jason, you're saying in law enforcement how crime was down because everybody was at home and people were giving money. An interesting thing here in Belize was they instituted a curfew, right? And it's a third world country, so crime can get pretty bad. So they instituted the curfew, and it was from, at first, when I first got here, it was from 8 p.m. until 5 a.m. Okay, so bars would all close at like 6:30. You couldn't purchase alcohol after 6 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so anyway, they bumped it up a little bit. Times changed, whatever, and then it was about November, December. The government finally came out. Like the curfews are all gone and everything here now, but the government came out and said in like December, yeah, we know the curfew is not changing anything for the disease. It's helping with crime because people aren't working, and the crime has gone way down. As soon as they lifted the curfew,
crime went back up.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what's happening in the U.S. right now, right? They're experiencing a crime wave. I don't know if it hasn't really gone the same way for us, but generally we follow their patterns to some degree. It takes time. It's a lag, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Canadians are generally more passive.
Well, we're passive.
We are.
While we're on the money topic, this has kind of just happened recently. The Liberals and the NDP formed this, I guess, coalition, right? And to put it plain and simple for people who do not want to follow, like, why. Basically, why it is the NDP has, if you look at their kind of outline of how they want to govern, they have these ridiculous spending ideas, put it that way, that traditionally, if you were to vote for them and they were to be in power, probably wouldn't fly in terms of, but like it would probably, whatever the COVID debt was, the NDP's plans would probably make the COVID debt look like fucking very small, right? So in order for Trudeau to stay in power, he's made this deal with the NDP if they back him with their no confidence votes, and in return, with this budget that he put out yesterday, it will reflect some of what they want to get done. Looking at that budget, I mean, I'm not a fucking mathematician, but it puts us in way, way more debt. And as
budget will balance itself, Ashley.
It'll balance itself. No, and as for business owners, right? For small business owners, when that shit needs to get paid back, it always falls back onto the small businesses, right? And like, I know, Linda, you just opened up your shop. How much does it concern you, like, for in terms of your future and your business's future, that, you know, they're planning on spending all this money that, you know, really who's going to have to pay it back is the small business person. And, you know, you've gone into so much debt, etc., just getting yourself off the ground. Now, you know, over the next 10 years, you're going to be looking at increased rates for all the kind of things that you just need to make a living just to help pay that shit back.
Honestly, I'm not even thinking about that in the future. I think really I'm looking more towards, right now my eye is on the World Economic Forum, the people who are running everything. I'm not looking to the NDP or the Liberals or anyone like that. I think our world is going to be very, very different from what we knew, and drastically so. I don't think I'm really thinking about that. I'm thinking about this fourth industrial revolution that everyone's playing along with. Like, to me, I could see the governments are playing along. Like, Trudeau is definitely playing along. You know, someone asks him a question and he answers a different answer to the question, like, and no one's calling him out on it, and no one's asking him the questions that we're all saying. Like, all of us who are on the same team saying, why are we doing things this way? Why aren't we talking about this? The conservatives who are looking to him for answers are not asking the right questions. So things are just going to go in the direction that they're going to go. And I don't mean to be doom and gloom or
no, you're not. That World Economic Forum was something I wanted to touch on later, but you said something very important there that I wanted to kind of bring out and talk about, was like when Trudeau answers a question, there's something he does really well.
Just keep saying science, but the science is telling us it's over.
Well,
and no one's calling him out on it. No one's saying, hey, look at our doctors, Dr. So-and-so, Dr. So, like all these epidemiologists, the CDC, who, whatever. No one's saying anything. It's like,
Chris has brought this up before when we talked before. It's the language that he's using, and the language that not just Trudeau's using, but multiple politicians in the same kind of role. When I say role, I mean the same association. So that, like you were talking about, Linda, with the WEF. So my examples would be Biden and Kamala Harris uses the same rhetoric. Trudeau uses it.
Oh, you hear the same phrases, these catchphrases over and over and over. You'll hear it from every news station, the exact word for word phrase. And they'll say it over and over and over until the people who are watching and following are repeating after them. They're programming people.
And even
it's a literal program.
And even in Europe too, a good example is the Marcoon character from, or what, Marcon or whatever the fuck, the
Macron?
France for the French Prime Minister.
Macron.
Yeah, Australia uses the same language, and Chris was very in tune with this, and I wanted to see if you can expand on like the rhetoric and the language that's being used now in relation to those of Adolf Hitler and those other evil fucks who did terrible things in the past. How can we draw the comparisons and basically use that as an example for what's to come?
People have very pliable minds. Has anyone in this group read the book called Influence by Dr. Anthony Cialdini?
No, I haven't.
No, I've heard of it. I haven't read it.
I've read it. I've applied it. Because I would use it in sales and in business because, people are, in a way, the book reduces us almost all to automatons. Like we all have different things that trigger us to respond in a specific way. So I'll use the law of reciprocation as an example here. This is one that's in the book. So we go back to the 1980s and you think of the Hare Krishnas, right? I don't even know if they're around anymore, but
they're around.
Are they? Okay. Well, I'm a country boy, right? Yeah. So the Hare Krishnas, what they would do is they try to get donations. So they go and they sing their song, and people would just ignore them. So what they started to do was they started to give people flour, okay? And they'd be asking for money, and they'd give you a flower. People would take the flower, but once they take the flower, they felt compelled to give something back.
Right.
Okay? So they would strategically do this, and they give the flower, and many people, not everybody, but many people would, fine, get away from me. Here's some money. Right?
Yeah.
And I've done that here in Belize a lot of times, right? So like I go somewhere, I'm a white dude, they see a white dude, they see money, they like, hey, give me money. Like I've had people walk up to me just with their hand out. Like fuck's sakes. Anyway, so they
we need
feel
to get you a tan, Chris. We need to get you a nice tan.
I'm dark, bro. You should see me right now. You can't tell from the white light, but
no,
man,
you are darker. You are darker from last time.
Jason, he's been there for 2 fucking years. He ain't getting any darker, okay?
I've been here a year. But anyway, that's the law of reciprocation. That's just one of the things. There's many of them, like the law of social proof, right? Social proof is like, well, this is what I'm doing. And this guy says that this is good, and therefore now I believe it, right? That's just an example of 2 of them that's in that book. They're applying this psychology on people all the time, and then this is nothing really new. Like Cialdini came out with this book, and it's, by the way, I highly recommend you read it. You're in business, read that book. It's a fantastic book. It makes you smart with your language. But as far as the rhetoric goes, is they're dividing on purpose, right? Like, people talk like, Linda, you brought up, like liberals, conservatives, like, I don't even like that terminology anymore because none of it matters. I'm a liberal, by the way. Like, I'm not what they call a liberal today, right? I'm a libertarian.
Right.
Anyway, they're othering everybody with the language. So, like, you can just go down like with Trudeau, right? Talking about, how does a politician get away with saying these people take up space?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yes.
Smokes. Right? Like, this comes right out. Like, I studied Joseph Goebbels in university. That was my focus, the propaganda minister of the Nazi Party. And language is so important. And more importantly, is people will hear the language the first time. And they will think like, that doesn't seem right. But then they hear it again, and 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 they hear it again. And repetition, they just now automatically believe that's just so. You watch Game of Thrones. You remember? You remember the Dothraki when Daenerys was in the
with the girls
early on? Yeah, the girls are like, "It is known."
Yeah,
it's known. That's kind of what we're going right now. Right. If you don't take a jab, you're a bad person. It is known. Right. Like. And you take up space and the science, like Linda, you brought that up, how they keep saying the science, like it doesn't matter anymore because they keep saying, they've repeated it so many times. And when it's on an authoritative source, like, you know, I don't even know how CNN could possibly be considered an authoritative source. Or the CBC, I mean, how arrogant is Canada to think that a government-sponsored news organization is actually giving fucking news? Part of my life. Like,
Well,
we're different.
Canadians.
We're Canadians. We're just different. Yeah, we're different. We're the only ones that's never been propaganda. Like, come on, right?
Well,
so
sorry to interrupt you, but I just wanted to, like, Trudeau's main line, and it seemed to have worked for him for a lot of the people who are not freely thinking, is this line of "we're all in this together." Like, Canadians have all been in this together the whole time, and the whole time.
That's classic fascist rhetoric.
And he says it every time you bring him a question. It doesn't even have to be about COVID. It could be about fucking finance. But Canadians have been through this together the whole time for the last 2.5 years. All been he says it so much that, like, there was, I think I mentioned this to you once, Chris, where I was in the car and they were playing the fucking interview with that douchebag, and he's fucking saying this thing. And for like a small moment, I'm like, I almost believed it, and I'm like, fuck no, stop, Ashton, stop, right? because I'm hearing it all the time on, you know, constant propaganda 24 on any fucking station you turn on. You sit in a doctor's office waiting. It's there. It's playing. And I think for the common person, the person who works a 9 to 5, they don't have to concern themselves so much with critical thinking, because the life is kind of, you know, wake up, go to work, come home, watch.
And some people are really comfortable with that. I was telling you about an argument I was having with my mother-in-law. She's like, I'm happy following the mainstream. I'm like, but I just told you about World Economic Forum. And she's like, oh, I'm not into American politics. I'm like, it's not politics and it's not American. It's the World Economic Forum.
And I think the crossroads we kind of met with the language now is that you have people who were used to a routine, right? They're used to doing things in their life, and the routine kind of got thrown off. And now they're kind of looking, how do I get back to that? Well, if I simply just listen, I can get back to that, right? Because being uncomfortable is not something that a majority of people are used to. That's why they work for companies. They don't have their own kind of...
Yeah,
go ahead, Jay.
Well, I was going to say, you know that we were engineered and trained to do it. You know, this started from junior kindergarten.
Yeah, I know that.
I was going to say the same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like our education system, like, and Blaine could probably speak on this because I know she spent some time in Japan, right? Living there, right? I saw how much groupthink and group influence steers a country. Right, because I was there in '99 to 2001, and they're in a recession, right? But you wouldn't know that because they didn't talk about it, right?
Yeah,
they were encouraging people to do things which is good for the whole economy. They have a saying that the hammer that sticks out gets hammered, a nail that sticks out gets hammered down. That was a common thing, right? Go along with it. Go along with flow. You know, your why, like your harmony. You must come in line, and so. Like I said, over these last 2 years, I think people who were not really radical figures, like I know, Chris, you've always been the kind of person that's kind of just been like, hey, wait a minute, I'm thinking about this thoroughly, right? In our conversations, even in your approach to business, you know, you and Blaine have always been like, no, there's a right way to do this and there's a wrong way to do this, right? And I want to do the right way, right? Just in my interactions with you, right? And I think over the last 2 years, we saw how slowly, like you guys mentioned, the group think, the voice became more and more powerful. When people started asking, hey, why are they going to have to lock things down? This is Canada. What are you so worried about? Why are they? It's a fluke. Like, I remember when this first started, I remember a guy that we used to train with, Peter, he's a pharmacist, and he was saying, do you know the likelihood of you getting this thing is like 1 to the 25th power? Like, he was like, do you know, like, he was talking just mathematics, like, you are not going to die from this. Like, this is not something to be concerned about. People are like, no, it's killing people. And I remember I'd listen to people say this stuff, and I'd go on Health Ontario website, and I'd look up the percentage of people that died, and it listed it by numbers of ages, right? And it was everybody over 70,000 people or so. Everybody else is in the hundreds. Some people were in the tens. I'm talking about for the entire time of COVID.
Yeah.
Well, there was a CTV did a segment where they put up a graphic, and it showed all the COVID deaths in Canada, and they broke it down to age, and it was like 99% of people 80 and above.
That's what I'm saying.
And it was like 15 seconds on the screen, and they deleted it.
Right. Right.
Because of like people on the internet, bang, they took pictures and it went out.
But this is the demographic that would normally pass from like just an annual flu as well.
Right.
Yeah. But you know what the thing is? The information is there. And so when we talked about people and, you know, like most people like someone mentioned, they're lazy, right? Like the information is there. It's not even like they're hiding it. You just have to go on the website with health statistics, and you'll see like how much people are dying, what are their ages, right? Well, how many kids have been infected, how many adults have been infected, how many senior citizens have been infected. You know, it's like we're not even, I think we're at about 1%, 1.8% death rate in Canada, right? Out of the people that have gotten it, and not even half the population has gotten COVID yet.
Oh, they're counting everybody too. They're not I was reading a document the other day about when they break down like the people jabbed and the people not jabbed and how many cases there have been and how many deaths there's been. Do you know they count the cases from people from December 2019 to December 2020, and they all count as unvaccinated. Unjabbed.
Well, this comes back to the language that I was talking about, right? Yeah. There's statistics, and we all I think all four of us here can agree that they're all flawed. They're not legitimate statistics.
You can make numbers look like
you can make numbers.
Yeah, you can, but you know, I'm not saying they're flawed. What I'm saying is they're there for you to make your own choice.
Yeah, but I'm saying they're fucking flawed. But here's where
I think what the two of you guys are saying is like Jason's saying the numbers are there, but the problem is the numbers that people give you to read, which is what Ashton's saying, are misleading.
Yes,
right. So like they'll play with the numbers on the mainstream, the authoritative sources, and they'll play with them so that people get convinced that, oh my God, this is the most terrible thing. But if you take the time yourself to look at the numbers, it's not what the mainstream is saying. But how many people have the time to do that? Like Ashton, you were saying that the 9-to-5 worker, he just doesn't care. He doesn't have the time. Yeah, right? And like you were saying, Linda, like I want to be in the mainstream. I find it easy, right? Like. That's what it is.
And so here's
one of the biggest problems. One more thing. As a libertarian, that frustrates me because freedom is lost because the individual doesn't take responsibility for their own.
Right.
And so here's the part that got me the most, and this is where my eyes were open the whole time, but this is where my eyes really opened within the last 6 to 8 months when it comes to this language and the rhetoric that was being used, is when they decided they were going to start reporting people who are jabbed and not jabbed, the infections daily, right? So I did this as a little bit of a thought experiment for myself, where I shouldn't have. It probably infected my mind with this bullshit too much, but I would go and I would fucking look at the statistics. I would look at the total number. So they would say, even number, 2,000 people were infected today. Of those 2,000 people, 550 were unvaccinated. And that would be the end of the story. So therefore, they were using statistics to manipulate you to think that, the majority are unvaccinated. They wouldn't mention how many are vaccinated. They won't mention how many are undisclosed. They won't mention how many are the only mention was, and this is where language comes back in, unvaccinated. Because what was the purpose of the last 8 months? Get as many people vaccinated as possible. How do we do that? We make it seem like everybody who's unvaccinated is dying and everybody vaccinated is staying safe. Well, the narrative fell apart in November when
Omicron
Omicron and Megatron and all the other fucking Autobots came in, and everyone was getting infected. And every day you look, what happened? The vaccinated were catching the virus more than their statistics would show. And then what happened 2 months later? Oh, we're going to stop reporting. We're going to stop reporting vaccinated, unvaccinated. Well, because the language is now because the language is now changed. It's no longer in their favor.
Well, they changed the definition of pandemic and the definition of vaccine, and herd immunity is like
they changed the definition of herd immunity. They changed the definition of They changed the definition of vaccine 3 times.
Yes, of anti-vaxxers as well.
They changed the definition of anti-vaxxer 3 times. They changed.
So back to that question that Ashton was saying, how do you compare that to like all those other regimes where that like are communist, basically? Like
you don't even need to compare it to a regime.
Through the absurdity, like you're just sleeping.
Yeah,
you're just sleeping at this point. All the signs are there.
Yeah, if you read 1984, like 1984 explains it perfectly.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right, where the buddy worked, he worked in the department where they changed definitions in order to suit the narrative, right?
Yes, and they changed history as well. Look at the statues they're taking down. They're taking away Dr. Seuss. They're doing shit to literature. Like every fucking sign is out there. Sorry, can I swear?
Yeah, you can. Listen,
come on.
Every sign is out there. It's so 1984. It's so Animal Farm. It's so Orwellian what we're living through.
Of course.
And if you can't open your eyes at this point, you're just not meant to. It's not. Not for you.
You know, I love to bring. Sorry, Jay, to jump in on you.
No, go ahead.
I love to bring up the greatest show of all time on TV. Right? Star Trek: The Next Generation.
You fucking old fuck. You old
greatest show of all time. And it also plays in with 1984. There's an episode where Jean-Luc Picard gets captured and he sees lights on the wall.
Yes.
And
the Cardassians.
Yeah. And he sees, it's funny because this whole Ukraine-Russia conflict here, there's the Cardassian Mountains. I'm like, oh, those guys are fuckers. But so he sees the lights going on and he's like, there's four. And they keep telling him there's 5.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tie this together. And then he eventually breaks down and says there's 5. It's just like in 1984 when he's captured. Have you guys all read 1984?
At the end of the book,
yeah. Because most people say they've read it, but they haven't actually read it.
I read it as an adult.
You know, at the end of the book, when they keep saying 2 + 2 is 5, and he's like, no, it's 4, it's 4, it's 4. Now to tie this together with how the messaging has been going, with how Ashton said, you know, the one day he started to actually believe it, and he slapped himself, right? It's exactly that. What happened? I can't believe I forget the character's name in 1984 right now. It's not coming to mind. Winston, thank you. Mm-hmm. So when Winston finally said 5, what happened to Winston?
They let him go.
But what happened? They let him go, and what happened?
He gave up.
Yeah,
he became 100%. He became 100% compliant.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's where like people who didn't want to get jabbed and got jabbed, and then all of a sudden, like it's like you got broken, right? And it's like you hear the message over and over again, and you've been pressed financially, you've lost your business, you've lost your house, your lifestyle has changed. Well, what do? When you finally
not only that, but he was doubtful because I think it was the isolation and not having any outside influences. Like,
well, that sounds pretty. Isn't that kind of common? Is it? Didn't we just go through that?
Yeah,
being a little isolated and right. You know what I mean? So it's like Winston he ended up complying at the end because what was the last line of the book? Right? I love Big Brother.
Yeah.
And you know that's kind of I think what's been happening to people is they may have been rebellious, but when they came to comply, they still have that. There's a little bit of rebellion in them, but it was broken, and then they just want to get back to normal, and whatever the government tells them that normal is that's where they're going to go. Like these people.
Well, if you sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'm done.
If you talk to anyone who has lived in a communist reality, like there's a Yeonmi Park. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of her. She's an Korean defector.
Hasn't she been debunked or something? I don't know.
I have no idea. It's possible. Like, you know, with everything that's going on, maybe she was installed.
No, I'll let you finish talking about it. But she hasn't been debunked. Basically, North Korea is trying to debunk her, after she escapes.
Oh yeah, of course. That's what
No
they do,
one
right?
thinks she's
It's
hot.
just like anyone that
Yeah,
gets
yeah.
canceled. It's like one minute we're in war with Oceania, the next it's East Ocean,
Yeah.
whatever, right?
East
So
Asia. We've always been at war with East Asia.
yeah, right. Yeah, always East Asia. Yeah. So what she's saying is they didn't even like fight back because all they would talk about is like, oh, I could eat bread for days. I could eat like 18 sticks of bread.
Mhm.
So it's like, I think that's what happened to Winston as well. It's like he's so distracted with basic needs that he's
Right.
just like lost his mind. He can't even fight anymore. You know?
And to some degree, Chris said something very powerful. Well, amongst other things, he said, like, as a libertarian, he finds it frustrating that people don't want to do the things necessary to stay free, which is educate themselves and take personal responsibility, right? I think that's what this whole thing works. So, for example, we in North America, right, we are privileged to live in the richest, most opportune times in human history, right?
Absolutely.
Health is not death by diarrhea and malaria and all
Not a reality
not
for us.
wiping us out.
That's
No,
a
we
bad way to go,
have
diarrhea death.
I know, but there's a significant portion of the population of the world. That's how they die. Kids
I
are
know.
being wiped out by diseases that we just take a little swig of Pepto Bismol and we keep going.
Good to go.
And so part of living in this rich, opulent society, right, where our drinking water, our toilet water is other people's drinking water, right? We bottle our water and sell it to people for like $4 or $5 for half a liter, right? Like we're living in some of the most rich, everything. Access to
The word you're looking for is decadent.
Decadent. Access to, but people look at that and think, oh, that's just the norm. It's like, no, it hasn't been like this for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And so people should take this time when you live in this rich environment to be self-informed, to think, to read 1984, right? Don't watch the movie, read the book, right? And if you can find an old copy, read the old copy before they get in there and start taking stuff out because culture is appropriate, right? Like we should, as an individual, educate yourself, right? As an individual, just ask questions and hear and listen, right? Like everybody here, I hear you all saying like, you kind of took a look at what was happening and you stepped back and was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound right. And so something triggered in your mind, critical thinking, it doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound genuine. Let me pause on listening to that and let me find other places of information. Somebody mentioned earlier about the CBC and different news. Like my friend and I have this argument all the time. He's like, they're not factual. It's not news. News has never been about informing the public. News has always been about selling advertising.
Yeah.
Right? It's never been about informing the public. We were sold the idea that by watching this half an hour segment, we will be better informed. This half an hour segment is just designed to sell us more things. Just like all of the TV shows are designed.
They're trying to make us a consumerist society, and they're trying to distract us with all the bells and whistle and Will Smith slapping someone and all that shit.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
That was totally planned,
It's like,
by
look,
the
a
way.
squirrel.
It was fake. It was a fake slap. It was a fake slap. I'm just saying.
It was. It really was.
Look at what we're doing right now. We are 4 individuals living in different parts of the world, different parts of the GTA, and we're having a conversation, right? And we're coming to a consensus that, hey, everybody got to really think now. Like, you got to really, you might not agree with anything we've said, but hopefully you're going to go pick up The Influencer. Hopefully you're going to go pick up 1984 and get some frame of reference for what we're talking about and educate yourself and say, you know what? Like, let me read that book they were talking about, because if it's going to make me think more critically about what I'm seeing, maybe I can put things in context, right? If you're going to listen and hear people talking about the Prime Minister and and you're like, well, who's Goebbels? Who are these? What's propaganda? Who are these people who make it their life's work to influence people and get people to do things? Go look it up. The information is just there.
Yeah,
it's libraries. It's online.
So sorry to cut you off, Jay. This is going to tie into what you were saying and kind of go into what I wanted to touch on next. Was I think me and Chris mentioned this before. I don't know the exact Russian names, but he was an ex KGB guy, and he did an interview on an American network. This is 15, 20 years ago.
That's more than that. You're talking about Yuri Bezmenov?
Yes, that's what it is.
He wasn't a KGB. He was a Soviet journalist.
Soviet, yeah.
That was he defected in the late 1970s to Canada. And it was actually a speech in Montreal.
Okay, thanks for correcting that. But I remember listening to the process of how it's pretty much what China's doing right now with
how to subvert a nation.
Yes, how to subvert a nation. And if you listen to that speech and you just stop, like you turn to, this is what I did. I pressed pause and I thought about everything that happened in the last 2 years. And I'm like, well, this is the 5-year process that he's explaining. This is and I noticed this mostly when I'll say this, I won't say their names, but I had grown-ass men coming to me, asking me questions and crying to me because their work was forcing them, you either take the jab or you get fired, right? And they all knew I was in a different position because I'm a business owner, so I don't have to make that decision. I do whatever the fuck I want to do, and I run my business. But they were asking, like, what should I do? What should I do? And I'm looking at what Mesmenov said, and I'm like, well, this is the perfect storm. What they have done is now the isolation, right? The isolation that they have done, making these gentlemen work from home. They're constantly, everything they're doing is on Zoom. Everything is phone call. They're no longer talking to people. So they're going crazy. All this news is being spread at them. Take this. You have to take this. You're going to lose your job. They just had another kid a year ago. They're in a financially hard position. Well, what do? If I don't take this, I'm going to lose my job, Ashton. And I felt for them, but I also was like, well, you're a grown-ass man or woman, because there's a few women who came. I had the same conversation. You got to make a decision. But at the end of the day, you have to make the decision that's best for you. And I'll never judge you on it. But what ended up happening, forget whether they took it or not, what ended up happening is the ones that did take it, 3-4 months later now, the mandates are being dropped. They're allowed to go back to work, or they would have been allowed to go back to work. And they're like, man, dude, I fucking took it and I didn't need to. All right? And what I keep coming back to is this is that 5-year process. Like, we're only in year 3. This is not over by any stretch of the imagination. And, Chris was talking about this once where there would be an event, right? And for Canada, this is where I wanted to go. That event was in January, the Freedom Convoy, right? Where people had just said, we've had enough, right? And there was so much misleading information about this this event in general, because it was made to seem like this was a bunch of anti-vaccine truckers that were fucking angry they couldn't work anymore.
Not just that, Nazis, predominantly white, conspiracy theorists, misogynists,
unacceptable views.
Every bad name you could throw at these truckers, they threw it at them.
And after repetition from years too, like sorry, it's just a bit of an aside, but like people like rejecting people from their families for not doing it, right?
Yeah.
When they come out and they've heard this constant message, this propaganda that, I would say it was Joseph Goebbels, but it wasn't. Joseph Goebbels he learned from P.T. Barnum. P.T. Barnum was the original master of public relations and messaging, and then like they just set the table, right? They made people suffer enough, so like, let's get the jab. I watched, man, I was so pissed about this. I watched a few months ago a South Park episode when the jab first came out. I was so mad. Matt Stone and Trey Parker freaking sold out. That was the most disappointing South Park episode I've ever seen. And I freaking love South Park.
Yeah.
And like, guys, like, what the hell is this? Like,
that was like Rage Against the Machine. You needed your vaccine or whatever to
Rage Against
concerts. Are you kidding me?
We're raging against the machine. Vote Joe Biden.
They are the machine. Yeah, they're the machine now.
Yeah, but like for Canadians, it was the boil over moment. That was the boil over moment where, and in fairness to Canadians, it wasn't violent at all. There was nothing violent about that movement. To this day, the Ottawa police officer chief can't answer the question whether there was guns there or not, because there weren't any guns. They didn't seize any guns. There weren't any guns. There was nothing but peaceful movement. Obviously, there was some, in every situation, there's going to be bad characters. But in terms of what was actually happening, was there was a group of people, vaccinated and unvaccinated, who were saying, it's time, look at what's happening. It's time to end these mandates that are requiring people to either give up their individual freedoms or rights or give up their personal body sovereignty. And we need to collectively as a group move on. I thought the initial and the finishing message of that whole movement was very positive, and which is why it was something where I was drawn towards and I supported, because I wasn't supportive because they were there fighting against, the government. Fuck the government. I was there because I believe everybody should be able to consciously make a choice for what's best for them and their family. And I believe that's what the fight was about. And, well, what ended up happening was Justin Trudeau ended up doing probably one of the most fucking disgusting, stupidest, disgusting things, and putting in the Emergency Act. And I wanted to talk about this a lot earlier, but the news cycle changes so fast, and it was all overwhelming at the time for me, and I figured it's a good time to bring it up now. I can go through all the bullshit that was happening, but they were freezing bank accounts. Like, these are things that you wouldn't even hear, you wouldn't even think of that would happen in a first world nation like Canada. The image is there, but it seems to be ignored, of a fucking police force trampling a First Nations chief.
So he had to revoke that, the freezing of the accounts, because they're trying to bring in this new digital banking system. Yeah. So once we catch on that they could just freeze our assets, then we're probably going to start revolting. And so that's why he got rid of that Emergency Measures Act.
Not just that, but historically his father did the same thing with the War Measures Act, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not a different play than what happened. And it's used to combat terrorism, right? It's the idea that they're using it for the greater safety of Canadians, right?
Well, and then they were trying to say that it was one of the most despicable thing that they did in the entire, and it hit the floor of the House of Commons. Everything was when Trudeau stands up and he starts talking about, they stand behind the swastika. It's like, those people who had the swastika there were not standing behind the swastika. Yes. They were protesting the swastika. Right. Yeah. And they used that. They manipulated.
What they said is, this is what Canada is becoming. This is what we're marching towards, basically.
And they just, and the media just ran with it, and they showed him saying that. And what the other thing that pissed me off was that conservative rep, the Jewish woman, when she got up and she played the offended role of it. It's like, that is why the government is poison, right? Mm-hmm. That woman, when she got up, she wasn't offended. She was playing the game, right? Because she knew exactly what Trudeau was doing. And now let's play motion. Like, if the Conservative Party, this is why I ride Paul Rivera on Facebook constantly, because he's a piece of shit too, right? They just play the game. Like, if the Conservatives, they got to get away from this emotional messaging, because that's all it is. Like, when I brought up Cialdini and influence, and that's all it is. They manipulate. You've never bought something in your life that wasn't an emotional decision. Think about it.
Yeah.
The crew, right? And so they just do this messaging, and then Trudeau brings this up on the House of Commons floor, and then the Jewish woman gets up, and then what happens? Okay, she had a right to get up and say what she said, right? However, then the media runs on it. And now they're trying to play the whole emotional thing, the right-wing media. There's no such thing as right-wing, and there's no such thing as left-wing. There's those who seek authority and those who seek liberty. That is it. Mm-hmm. And they play this fucking game, and people buy it. Like, enough, right? That trucker protest, it was a peaceful protest. They used all the rhetoric they possibly could. I'm sitting here in a third world country watching it from the tropics, and just I'm just disgusted by the Canadian government, by Canadians who believe that shit, right? Like, it's stop and think, look what you're doing.
Let me ask this question. I think, and this is what as I was watching the whole thing, I'm like, are people going to remember this when it comes to election time? Because I think that everything that people have gone through these last 2 years, Chris, you had to literally change your lifestyle, right? I had a small business. I pretty much shut down, right? I shut down recently, and I was like, I think I'm going to pack it up. But people were convincing me, I'm thinking I'm going to start it back up. But I was going the same route that you were, Chris. Like, hey, you know what? Let me just move on with my life. Yeah. It's just too much stress to be trying to figure out whether I'm open, whether I'm closed, whether I'm open, whether I'm closed. But are people going to remember this when it comes time to hold people accountable? That's the one thing I think, watching this whole thing, I think the one thing that no matter what party is in power, no matter what party is represented, no matter, it's like we fail to hold these people accountable and make them pay for their rhetoric, for their pandering, for their manipulating of the public. I'm talking any conservative.
Honestly, about that, I wouldn't have shut shit down. Take the fine and wait till it has its day in court. I've heard of people having a fine and they keep pushing back the date because once people start seeing that they can't win those cases, like that the business owner wins because like now we're going against the Constitution, then it sets a precedent for everyone else to open their business and not comply because it's not legal what they're doing and they can't win in court. So.
But so for example, that, right? All the tickets handed out and stuff, yes, fight it. But what I'm saying is I hope people remember all the stuff that they lost and all the things that they had, always had to twist in the wind when this was happening, being labeled something that you were not, because there was truckers that were there that were brown, black.
There was a lot of
truckers coming from the United States. Everybody was in support of it. That's why I think it influenced the whole nation because people saw the whole nation in it. Yeah. Right?
Well, it influenced other countries too.
Yeah.
Like the whole world was watching.
Nobody bought the fact that it was racist, right? Nobody, like, people heard Canadians are.
Don't say nobody. I know people who did.
Yeah, I know some people.
Really?
Yes,
yeah. Wow. Nobody I know bought that. Nobody I know. All the black people I know were like,
yeah, you need to meet some people.
My uncle's down there. My neighbors down there. These are all people of color who have businesses. A lot of this was a protest from business.
Yeah.
Right? Small business, medium-sized business. They raised so much money to the fact that the government had to be like, no, we don't want people to think that you can be empowered enough. Like, you don't need us. You can just come together, fun protests with your own money. Right? Wasn't the account GoFundMe frozen?
Yeah, right? So that's what I was going to come to next.
Sorry.
Right? That's what I was going to come to next because, I think the one thing people don't realize is the collective group, when people actually come together and actually participate and come together, that's the one thing, like forget the convoy and the actual parking on the lawn and everything. Like when we come to the finance part, right? When we talk about hedge funds and all these different groups running these things, the only way they get money is by people giving them money, right? Hedge funds and those kind of things, they don't get money by just sporadically coming. People give them money to invest for them, and that's how they've built this thing. Well, the Freedom Convoy collectively raised more money than almost all Canadian politicians raise for their own campaigns. That's a big fucking deal, right? Even Jagmeet Singh's fucking brother-in-law gave a whole bunch of money, and then they had to retract, right? But my point being is, here's the part that disgusted me the most. The Emergencies Act disgusted me, but this part, when I woke up in the morning and I found out this was happening, I was appalled because what ended up happening was the people who donated to the second cause, I think the Give, Send, Go, which was the second website that was replacing it, they got hacked. And all the information from donors was then put on a Google map. And
the Washington Post had a journalist start calling people. That person got raked, though.
So what I ended up doing was to confirm this information, I opened the map on my Google Maps on my phone. And for 4 days, whenever I open up Google Maps to actually navigate somewhere in the fucking city, it was showing me all the drop points of people in the areas that were fucking donating, the amount they donated, their home address, as well as their email. Right? In what first world country can a government, like, give me a time in history that we have been alive where that has been acceptable to give away private information? And
it's against the law. It's actually against the law.
It's against
doxing.
law.
It's doxing. It's against the law. But they only punish. I got to bring up left and right as much as I hate to bring that up, because they only punish the people on the so-called right.
Yeah.
If they do that. Look what happened. This, you could have seen it happen. It happened 2 years ago to Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson's house got invaded by a bunch of Antifa. They were throwing, they were screaming, honking the horn, throwing Molotov cocktails at his house.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if it was actually. I don't know if the Molotov cocktails. It was pretty bad though. Like, he has a safe room. His wife and kids or whatever were in there. Had to call the police. Nothing happened. Nothing happened from that. You don't have to like Tucker. But the fact that if that were Rachel Maddow, oh yeah, that would have been a big deal.
Or that Joy lady I can't stand. What's her name?
Joy Behar, right?
Listen,
like the double standard. The double standard is just so bad, right? Like, it's so bad. Like, okay, let's look at Trump and Biden. Okay. Trump would say, the sky is blue. Media would come out and say, lie. It's partially purple, right?
That's funny as shit. Sorry.
Joe Biden comes out and says, Putin's got to be removed from power. And the media comes out and says, he didn't mean that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, like, it's insane. Trump talks about, like, putting a drug that, they say, oh, he's telling you to inject bleach into your veins.
No, it's not what he was saying. But
he never said that. Yeah. Biden says, what was another one of his recent gaffes that he said? If Russia uses chemical weapons, we'll respond in kind. Or he didn't mean that the U.S. would use chemical weapons, right? But if it were, it doesn't matter. It could be my freaking cell phone as the Republican leader, right? They would say my cell phone said, like, he said they would use chemical weapons. They're going to use a false flag. Like it's ridiculous, and that's the game, right? And that's the oligarch controlling it. Like, to go back to the beginning, right? Like, it's the crazy double standard that we're going through right now. And I don't know where I'm going with this,
but go ahead, Jay.
As somebody who, a lot of my friends have the same perspective you have, Chris. I don't think Trump helped himself by being a liar, and so it's easy to.
I wouldn't say he's a liar. I say he's a master of hyperbole. Biden is a straight up liar.
Hyperbole. It's a thin line between hyperbole and lie.
Yeah.
Right. It's a thin line.
Hyperbole, like, he'll tell you, like, oh, this cell phone, this is the greatest cell phone. He's a salesman.
Right.
Yeah.
It won't be a cell phone. But
Biden will tell you this is a beer bottle.
Right. So I mean, I think Trump is who he is. I think that he didn't help himself, and I think he is easy not to like, right? Especially when he ran as a Republican. It's easy not to like, because Trump really has no party affiliation. He's not even really a Republican. Like, no, he was not really a Republican.
He's right? More left wing than Bill Clinton.
That's what I'm about to say. He's more on the. That's why I think he was shocked to hear the things that people who he probably contributed to their campaign on the left side were saying about him and how he was villainized. Because really and truly, like, Trump really is a libertarian. Like, he's a capitalist, right? Like, he's like, just stay out of my way while I make my money. And so I think that he's easy not to like, because he says and does whatever he feels like in an age where you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
So it's easy. He's an easy villain.
So here's a question for you, Jason.
Mhm.
So do you think it's better to have a duplicitous smiley face than to have a boorish person who speaks his mind?
No, I would say to you that if I had money, I'd probably be more like Trump than I'd be like myself. Especially if I had money my whole life.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being raised a certain way to just don't take it from anybody. Just go, 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 go. Like, there's nothing wrong with that capitalist mindset that Trump has. I think the problem is when you go into politics, the scam they sell you is that you're here to help. Right?
Yeah, but see, that's what I'm saying. Like,
right.
It's almost like you're saying the populace needs a duplicitous smiley face than in order to appease their emotions.
They don't need it.
What is actually the downfall of society?
Well, and my counter to that is Trudeau the smiley face, because when I
Beautiful hair.
when I observe what happened with that convoy thing, and this is coming back to what Linda was talking about earlier with the WEF, and this is my belief, call me conspiracy theory, whatever the fuck. It was bringing so much attention. Like, for the first time in years, Canada was literally getting all the press. People were like, what in the fuck is going on in Canada? What is going on in the capital? And, and this is not in Trudeau's defense, but there's a lot of pressure on him at that point. Like, world leaders are looking at him.
He went skiing. He felt fine.
Yeah, he was already disrespected as fine. Like, I'm sure you've seen videos of him trying to shake other people's hands at those conferences. No one wants to shake his fucking hand. So now he's on this hot seat where, he's already losing poll numbers, all that kind of political crap. And now he's in this hot seat where people are watching. So his only option at this point was to do that emergency act, in my opinion. It's as despicable as it is. In his shoes, what else would he have done? But the other part about this is
he could have actually been a leader and spoken with the people. Clearly weren't just a fringe minority.
Because that convoy bought doctors to debate his doctors, and they never showed up. So
yeah.
Question. Doug Ford brought in the Emergency Powers Act in the province too, right?
Yes, because of the border blockade.
No, not just that. I mean, throughout COVID, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it was different though. He didn't have extra policing
right.
Yeah.
rights that the federal government does.
I think what Trudeau did was trash, but I think that in a lot of ways, our premiers throughout the country didn't show a lot of, even the conservative premiers did not show a lot of leadership in buckling and bowing to a lot of the pressure that they were getting through the news media, because you remember, the prime minister cannot make provinces enact emergency powers unless he does a nationwide emergency power. He didn't do it for the entire 2 years, except when the truckers came to the capital, right? And so, in a sense, he did it when it was deemed this is an emergency that's going to affect the entire country. So I think that Ford probably played the best hand he can play. He used some chess moves to allow Trudeau to take the heat for making that choice, when in fact he was using that same level of power in this province and bringing in mandates and bringing in things that people did not agree with that were conservative, members of his own party, right? But the question is he going to be held accountable for that? Because if you're going to point to Trudeau, you got to point to Ford as well, right?
Yeah, they're all shitty. Look what Kenny in Alberta did. If you want to see a conservative who really dropped the ball in the pandemic, look what Kenny did. Kenny, he flip-flopped all over the place. I mean, last summer he was like, "Oh, there won't be any more lockdowns. Right. We're all done with that." And boom, like 2 weeks later, lockdown. Mm-hmm. It's the Uniparty. It's the Canadian Uniparty. They're all in it, man.
Well, here's where I'm going with this, and this is where I wanted to tie this into the next thing we were going to talk about. And Linda was talking about it with the World Economic Forum, right? We all know that Trudeau is heavily involved with that organization. In fact, fucking what is this? Klaus Schwab, the supervillain. He's even fucking said that, you know, we've penetrated the Canadian cabinet.
Fucker even dresses like a Romulan.
Yeah. Right. So this is where I kind of tie this in my. I had to process that for a second. So here's how I processed all of that in my. Here's how I process all of that in my head. Right, where, you know, Canada is supposedly one of the more invaded countries in terms of the World Economic Forum. They've sunk in their teeth into Canada, you know, the most. That from the perception of how they're talking, that's how I perceived it. Now you have this rebellion happening, right? So I felt like maybe this was an act of, you know, Trudeau got a call. Hey man, what's going on over there? This goes against our little thing that we have to get done by 2030, which means you need to get this shit in order because the whole world is watching. And if this continues to go the way it goes, we're not going to be able to continue with this World Economic Forum agenda where you will own nothing and be happy. Right? And
he was coached. I don't think he was threatened. I think he was coached.
But you understand what I'm saying? Where now I'm coming into this whole World Economic Forum where I'm starting to pay more attention to it and the people that are involved with it. And the people that are involved with it are the exact same people we've been talking about for the last hour and a half now, going on 2 hours, are the BlackRocks, the Vanguards, like the Pfizers. I heard an interview with the Pfizer's CEO saying that they're developing a pill and it won't do anything, but check to take it'll tell them
like a marker, a biotracer or something.
Yeah,
to show compliance.
It's not going to do anything. The pill is not a COVID pill. It's not doing it. It will let them know that you took it. Right?
Does anyone watch JP Sears, Awaken with JP on YouTube?
I fucking love JP.
He's so funny. He's got a video of the World Economic Forum where some guy just under Klaus Schwab is talking, and he's talking about being able to control people's minds with like chips and shit like that. Like it's actually a thing that they're
What did he say? Sorry to jump in on you, Linda. Did you see how he said like how most people are useless and we just got to keep them drugged and playing?
Yes, like we need to be ruled by them. Yes.
Yeah. And like,
yeah, I believe that. I think there's two different types of people or two different types of orientations, and those are the elites that think they have to take control of everything for the better good. I don't think they know they're evil. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then there's the other who work for the greater good of everybody by not service to self, but service to other people. So I think that's basically where we're at right now.
Well, I mean, okay, and I'm not defending any of these people, but most people, when they get into politics or they get into pharmaceuticals or any kind of business, I think most people genuinely get into it because with their intent to help or do good. But in their approach to help and do good, they're actually doing things that are super negative, right?
Yeah, and they learn to start to fear what they're going to lose.
Yeah. So,
can I ask this question?
Yeah, go ahead.
How many people think you can stop the New World Order from happening? How many people here that amongst us think that you can stop the New World Order from happening?
I think I can with my mind, not necessarily physically or emotionally or anything. Because when you talk about this New World Order, I don't think it's as dramatic as people are gonna think it's gonna be. It's not gonna be like this utopian fucking society that's gonna happen overnight.
It never is. It never is.
It's never gonna happen like that. And what I think it's gonna be is a psychological war, where you're going to have people who are going to accept what's going on, and you're going to have other people who are going to fight it, but not physically. Because if this turns into a physical altercation, I don't think anybody's a winner, right? We're going to destroy cities. We're going to destroy people. We're going to destroy lives. I don't think.
You don't think they don't want that to happen?
Well, yeah. I'm on Chris's side. I think the war, it's already been fought, right? I think that COVID showed us in 2 years. They turned families against each other. They turned communities against each other. people were given an option to take something or have your life changed in a way that you don't want it. Some people took it, people didn't. I mean, they villainize people for not wanting. Total transparency. I got the vaccine at the initial stage because I was like, I want to get out of here. I want to go hang out. I want to. So I took it. I was like, hey, I'm just going to take this so I can go hang out, do what I got to do. That was April of last year, right? I regretted taking the vaccine when I saw they brought in mandates, right? Because in my mind, it was like, why do they need to have, like, people were taking it. So as someone who took it, I regretted it. I was like, oh my God. I didn't want all this. I thought it was going to be a choice. You take it, you don't take it. Like, all my friends didn't take it. I took it, right? I was like, hey, I want to hang out. I want to be around people. Whether they take a vaccine or not, whether they get sick or not, that's their choice. I want to make a choice. If I'm going to hang around people who I know who are not vaccinated, I'll just be protected, right? So, in transparency, I took the vaccine, right? But I regretted taking it.
Right? Jason, there's a funny video I saw on YouTube. It's a black dude and a half black dude, right? And the half black dude is now on. He's got this. He has to carry this thing for his heart because he had an adverse event and it caused his heart to be screwed up. And the guy's got a pretty good spirit, and he's like, because so the black dude is saying to the half white, half black guy, he's like, so we told you not to take the jab, and he's like, yeah, I know, I did it. I thought I had it. Now what do you got? He's like, I got to carry this thing around because I had an adverse infection. Just nigga, you have your half black side is so pissed at you right now. The video's fucking hilarious. You would appreciate it.
The screen froze. I didn't catch that.
but like, listen, so I really wonder if people feel as though they can stop this new world from happening. Because I don't think it's something, it's going to happen, right? It's happening as we speak. Like, they're talking about the metaverse already. They're already planning to have everybody, well, maybe not our generation, but the kids that are coming up behind us, they're growing up in a world where they have two worlds, the flesh and blood world and the online metaverse avatar life that they live, where literally they just plug into that as entertainment, right? My kids already do Roblox, right? They already do Minecraft. They already do all that stuff where they're talking to people all over the world, building houses, building streets, building cities, and they just interact on that for hours at a time.
Yeah,
right?
I think Ashton got it right when he said it's a psychological warfare. I think they're trying to take our consciousness. They started with the propaganda. They laid out their plans. They're rolling it out. And if you're not with it, like, I know for this new financial system coming up, everybody needs to have like a vaccine pass. I know it's not a thing right now, but I think federally they're going to keep it to travel, which, speaking of third world countries versus ours, in Cuba, you could travel, right? And they're in a communist country, but Canadians can't travel if you're not vaccinated. That's just a side note. But I think they're coming.
No, you could have always traveled without the vaccine. It's coming back.
See, that's what people say, but there's no agreement on it because the flights, like what are you going to do? You're going to buy a ticket and then Air Canada is going to say, no, you can't fly.
No, I know plenty of people who are, I know plenty of people who are unvaccinated who have traveled, no problem. Yeah. The only thing is
coming back.
Yeah, coming back is a problem, but the purpose of the mandate and this specific topic of travel that we're talking about was to make you miss something so much that you would just do whatever they said. It wasn't meant to protect anybody. Other countries don't care. Other countries have their own restrictions, yada, yada, yada. It wasn't meant to that. It was meant to say, how bad do you want to travel? If you want to travel, you got to take the fucking jab, right? But when you actually go there, they can't limit that freedom of movement, right? I have a cousin who she showed up at the airport without a ticket booked, found the one that had the space. She went to Jamaica. Unvaccinated, no problem. They can't actually physically stop you. It's that they put so many barriers in place to try to deter you or influence your decision.
And the people who had money were traveling the entire time.
Yes. In Belize, if you're a Belizean citizen and you don't have your vax card, you can't leave. You can't leave the land border. You can't fly.
Oh,
if you're
really?
a citizen. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you're,
Yeah.
I guess, a resident, you can go wherever you want to go.
Because you have a passport from another country.
Ah, okay.
Right. So like I'm waiting for my permanent residency card, and actually that's a concern of mine, right? But I Ashton knows. I've always got trapdoors. I've also got a Mexican residency.
Oh, okay. Okay, all right.
So I can fuck off to Mexico if I want to.
Yeah.
So
smart.
Yeah. But bringing it back to this, like Jay was saying, how can you fight the New World Order? Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
So, Linda, you're going to like this. I don't know if you've already been on this page, but from the vibe I get from you, there's a YouTube channel called Academy of Ideas.
Yes. Yes.
After
school. Yeah.
After school uses Academy of
Alan
Ideas
Watts
a
and
lot.
stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, that's after school. Academy of Ideas is used by after school a lot. They have their own channel. It's absolutely awesome. Jay, you should look it up too.
Yeah, I'm gonna check it out.
And he talks about this exact subject, Ashton, about how you deal with this. So that's a great question, Jay. Like asking about, like how do we fight this? There's a video that the Academy of Ideas released. I want to say it was about 6 weeks ago. It was about parallel societies. So one of the ways that you do it,
I saw that one.
That one, yeah, is developing, and they're talking about this band that was in the Czech Republic back when they were in the Soviet Union, and how this band, they had a pretty cool name. I can't remember the name of it, but they just did everything completely opposite, and they kind of developed. This was in the 1980s, and they developed a parallel society. Basically, they ended up getting arrested, but they created such a strong society. It all contributed to the fall of the Soviet Union. So like, in order to deal with this, is you just have an alternative society, right?
Counterculture.
They had their own system. Yeah.
And I mean, okay, like, is that possible in Canada's landscape right now?
Yeah. I mean, when I listen to this guy give a lecture about cryptocurrency, specifically Bitcoin, not that Bitcoin is the answer to all the problems. But when he said something, he's like, listen, if you create something that governments can't control, right, the advantage is everyone connected to that system cannot be controlled. And so when he was explaining, like, because I had an idea what Bitcoin was and cryptocurrency was, but he was giving a better explanation than I had heard. And he was like,
centralized, it's not regulated,
Yeah, it's not regulated, right? It's shared by a community, and the value of it is based on the rarity and the fact that it's a limited resource, right? Yeah. So he's like, you can go anywhere in the world right now and access your Bitcoin, pull it out in whatever currency you need to pull it out in, right? It's still worth the same thing, whatever currency you go in. And he's like, the problem with money, because this guy was a billionaire, he still is, because the problem with money is money devalues over time. And he's like,
especially when you print so much of it, it's not rare.
Right. And he was pointing to what's happened over the last 2 years. He's like, all the nations, even America, with being the standard of money right now, the dollar being like the standard, he's like, they printed more money and they devalued their money. And he's like, yo, if you put your money in this bank in this country, you don't know if the government's going to nationalize all the banks, freeze everyone's accounts, and say you can't take up money, or like what they did to Putin, right? Countries are going to like come together, lobby, and try to devalue your currency to attack you, and the money you have in there means nothing now. So he was like, with Bitcoin, you'd be like, oh, they're not taking. I'll just go here and take my money out there where it's of whatever value it is. And so I think that, like Chris was saying, if you could find a way to create a space where the government cannot control, no government can control, whether it's the currency, the technology, the land mass, other governments can't control it, then you can protect yourself against what's coming. The problem is most people want what's coming because they've been sold what's coming since they were kids.
And they've been told that what's coming is better for them, will make them happy.
Right.
Yeah.
Like we didn't grow up we didn't grow up in a social media age. We were born before there was an internet and social media, right? Yeah. So if we disconnect, it's not going to be the end. We'll read books, like we'll socialize with our friends. We'll, read the newspaper.
Go back to nature and stuff like that. Get off the internet. Yeah.
But kids right now, you can't tell them, no, unplug. They're afraid of that.
Yeah.
Right? And anything that's going to keep them connected to the big matrix, they want that. Whatever's going to give them faster interaction, faster connection.
I had some friends come down here a couple of weeks ago. He was my best man for my wedding, right? I was his best man, and Lane was her maid of honor, and she was in our wedding party as well. And their daughter came down, and we're the godparents for the daughter. The daughter's a 13-year-old girl, nice girl, like she's a good girl, and good parents, right? They were here, and I couldn't believe, like, the daughter she missed her friends. So they came down in the middle of the dead of winter in Canada to freaking paradise, Placencia Belize.
Yeah.
And the daughter was concerned that she needed to talk to her friends. She needed to connect online and talk to her friends. And it was this drama thing. And at one point, I remember she was supposed to see her friends. It was like 5 o'clock, and they're over at our place, and I'm driving, and Blaine's like, "Oh, we got to get Maya back." I'm like, "Fuck that! I'm gonna stop where I want to stop. I don't give a shit." Wow. Right?
Oh, what a great dad!
Oh man, but that's crazy because you think about when we went on vacation as kids. Like, if my parents, I remember we went to Florida one time. I was in grade 7. We never went on big vacations. We drove an RV to Florida. We went to Disney World. And never again. But anyway, we went to Disney World.
Boycott Disney.
And we on the drive down, like, I didn't think of any of my friends. I didn't give a shit. Yeah. Like, it was back in the day when, like, I remember the last day of school. You're excited because the last day of school, you go home, you don't see your friends until September. Right. And you don't care. Right?
You do other things.
Yeah. Well,
you hang around through neighborhood kids, right?
Right.
Joe, coming back to the crypto thing, right? Joe Rogan. Did anyone see the interview he did with? I think his name was Majid Nawaz. He used to be a former extremist. He was a Muslim extremist, and then he turned his life around, and now he advises governments on how to handle altercations without violence, right? But one of the he's from the UK, and one of the things he was bringing up was that the UK, as well as many other countries, are now trying to develop their own digital currencies, right? And so the UK is very transparent. They put out the outline of how they want to do it, these digital currencies that the UK is going to produce, and I'm pretty sure Canada and the US are going to follow suit. They're designed so that, say now all of a sudden, you're a worker, you work for, just pick any company, a bank in Toronto. You get paid now in Canada's official digital currency. So you're no longer being paid $1. Like, most people don't understand this concept anyway because they get direct deposits into account. They never actually are getting paid. That money is going straight to the bank, who then spends it, and it's just a fucking number on your screen. But that's a whole nother discussion. But now you're going to get paid in Canada's official digital dollar. So in most people's eyes, that dollar is the exact same as the current dollar they have, because they never see the dollar exchange when they earn the money, right? But the catch to this system that they're going to try and bring in is that your employer now can tell the government what that dollar can be eligible to be spent on. So you can, they'll be able to say,
yes, I heard that.
Your worker is not paying attention at work. He's not doing X, Y, and Z. We're going to pay him because legally we have to give him this money, but he's not going to be able to go to the aquarium. He's not going to be able to.
Social credit.
Social credit.
Side. Yeah.
And it seemed like a far off concept in 2019, but now with whatever has gone on, and governments are smart. Like, to downplay them, to think that they're stupid and all these politicians are dumb. Yes, they're dumb, but collectively they're smart as fuck. What they're going to try to do is manipulate cryptocurrency to make people think that, oh, it's a great thing now.
Mhm.
Let's use it. But all of a sudden, restrictions will be put on the cryptocurrency. So we've gone through 2 years of restrictions going on how you can earn money. Now we're going to be going into this cycle, like this new world order, where you can earn money as much as you want, but we're going to tell you how you can spend it, right?
Yeah, that's probably what they're gonna do. It's gonna be a challenge.
Yeah, like I want to buy a 6-pack of beer. Oh, you bought too much beer this week.
Right, right. And I think that's what people are gonna be afraid of, right? I think the benefit of Bitcoin is that it's not government controlled, and that's why it's open to illegal activity, like drug dealers,
laundering,
money laundering, because it's like they can take their money anywhere in the world, right?
Yeah.
I think that when governments get into that, there's going to be reluctance for people because of the sphere of control, right? They're going to have to be a little bit more subtle. They're probably they would probably have to do it in the metaverse first, because right now a lot of people that do online gaming and all that stuff, they're already buying skins and purchasing through electronic currencies already in the gaming world, right?
Yeah.
That stuff is already happening. And so it'd probably be better to introduce it into the metaverse and then let it come into the flesh and blood world, because people would feel comfortable doing it in that world. That's why I said I think a lot of this is going to really be on our kids. They'll absorb it a lot quicker, because we'll look at that suspiciously, like, what do you mean Canadian currency digital?
They don't know any better because they're being groomed like right from the start. Right. They don't know what sexuality is. It's all confusing. We can't define a woman.
Right.
All these ideas.
Adult human female.
What's that?
Adult human female.
when you make everything mean nothing, then they can define what it is.
Yeah, the Ministry of Truth all over again.
Right. Yeah. And so, see, I think they're going to wait till a lot of us die off or get so old that what we say doesn't matter.
Yeah.
For us to not tell the next group of people, like our kids, hey, don't do that. That's not going to work out well for you. Right? So it's coming, but I don't know if we'll see it effectively. I think we'll see the beginning of the downfall of the American.
Well, look how fast everything's moved in the last couple of years, Jason.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Yeah, well, I mean, World Economic Forum clearly puts out their timeline, 2030. Like, we're 8 years away from this timeline of your home not being worth anything anymore, right? So
I think there's going to be a major war fought before that. I think a major war would let that fall into place better than just.
We're already in it. We're already.
Well, that was the last thing I wanted to talk about before we ended everything. It's
fifth generational warfare.
Yeah, like we went from COVID to Freedom Convoy to the last thing you're hearing about now. Everything you turn on is to Ukraine. Now, I'll be the first to say I'm not happy that people are dying. I'm not happy that bombs are being thrown off. I'm not happy about any of that. I think the problem that we're seeing now with this constant shift of news cycle is I don't think this is going to stop. I think this is going to be a continuous thing where this is going to be the trend where you're going to put in a stress-induced news cycle. You had COVID. It was extremely stressful. People were stressed out. It affected their lives. So you're going to continue to put in stressful news cycles. And the point of that being is that at some point, people are going to turn off their brains and say, okay, I'm going to accept this narrative because of I can't take it anymore. I'm not humanly
I support the current thing.
Yes, exactly. I'm not capable of doing my own research and looking into every single situation that's popping up every 3-4 months. They change the cycle. And so that's what we're seeing now where this war in Ukraine. Now, I've taken some time and looked at it, and this is where we come back to our language conversation where Trudeau's like, we're protecting democracy. Well, was Ukraine ever a fucking democracy? I don't think so. If you look at Oliver Stone's movie, the Ukraine on Fire, which they banned from YouTube, you got to go on Rumble to watch it now. I don't even think Ukraine was ever that much of a democracy in the first place, and
communist country.
Exactly.
By the way, Rumble's a better broad platform because you can actually play the video and do something else.
Yeah, but this cycle that we're in now with this Ukraine thing, and I mean, the reason I bring it up is because I talk to my clients, and it's something I talk about. I get information from them just to feel out how other people are thinking, right? And there's this constant conversation of NATO should enforce a no-fly zone, right?
That's the dumbest thing they could possibly do.
Well, if you look into what that means, it means that we're starting a war, right? It means that we're gonna prevent them from flying over there. If anyone flies in there, we're going to shoot it down, right? There's this conversation now where Biden's saying that if I'm going to go to war, I'm going to go to war with you guys, right? Here's my problem with this, and I say this as somebody, and Chris has a son too. I have a little son too, right? The people who they're going to send to the war is not the guy with $10 million in his bank account. They're going to send the people to war with minimum wage jobs and who are sons of middle class and lower class people. And now we're saying that we're Canadians, especially, like, let's get involved. We need to get involved. We're going to get involved with the lives.
Because Zelensky's so cool, and you have that ghost shooter or whatever, like all the stupid stories.
All lies, too, right?
Lies.
I know you'd be, yeah.
And all four of us here practice martial arts, and we know what it's like to be in a fight. Right? We know what it's like to be in a fight where somebody's trying to submit you, but you can tap out and it's over. And you get to go back home. Right? That's not what we're talking about now. We're talking about war. We're not only talking about war, we're talking about modern warfare, not World War II warfare where you shot a fucking tank, some people blew up. No, we're talking about, people can press a button and disintegrate fucking cities in a heartbeat. And not just one button. They can press 10 and disintegrate fucking continents, right? This is modern warfare is fucking ugly, right? And not only are we talking about that, like, and here's my beef with, and I want to hear you guys' thoughts about this, but we have people in positions of power talking about war, sending men out to fight when they're not even willing to fight themselves. I don't think that anybody in a position of power should ever have the authority to send a troop to fight a war that they are not willing to go in there and do themselves, because we're talking about people's lives here. The whole 2 years we're talking about, you got to wear your mask because you can kill grandma, but all of a sudden we're like, no, go to war and end this in Ukraine.
I think your tenet and your belief system is aspirational, but that ship sailed. Old men sending young men to die in war for the last 6,000 years. Women have been taking care of children when their husbands go to war and get conscripted to go to war and fighting the good fight for the last couple thousand years and being the victims of war, because war has always been ugly. It's always been destruction of cities, raping and killing of women and children, destruction of infrastructure, enslaving of people. War has always been ugly, disgusting, dirty. I don't think we need to go to war for Ukraine. I think that these people who are beating the drum of war do not remember World War I being fought pretty much over the same part of the world that's being fought and argued about right now. The issues that are
over
there,
the same thing. It's over the same thing. It's over the same damn thing.
Are ethnic issues that have been around for the last 100 years. Not that the blood of Ukrainians is any less valuable than the blood of Canadians, but I would say that we've learned that those issues cannot be solved with war. Because here we are 100 years or more from the First World War in the last century, fought over pretty much the same area, being fought with the same country.
Over oil.
Over oil, over land, over breathing room, as Hitler called it. It's not worth it. Now, I don't want to come across as insensitive to people who are Ukrainian or have Ukrainian family members who are really suffering right now, who want some form of help, right? I think what they're doing is enough. I think that what they're doing is going to get a resolution. It's not the best resolution. But I don't think these other countries that are talking about war now, they really didn't want to help Ukraine, because they could have made Ukraine part of NATO, and this would not have happened, right? If they made Ukraine part of NATO back when Ukraine gave up their nuclear weapons.
Well, can Ukraine even be a part of NATO?
This would have
No,
happened.
it's never
Right,
going to happen.
this would have happened right then and there.
Right. Like, listen.
Russia would never have allowed that to happen.
Right. Now, if Ukraine...
And with good reason.
Yes. Right. I don't, like, I'm trying to be sensitive as much as I know about the situation. I don't think Russia's apprehension with having Ukraine as part of NATO is unwarranted. Nobody wants to be surrounded by their enemies. Okay?
Yeah.
We know NATO was created specifically to keep Russia in check after the Second World War, after the First World War, right?
It wasn't to keep Russia in check. It was a countermeasure to the Soviet Union.
Yes. Well, when I say Russia, the Soviet Union, right? But
the Soviet Union was NATO, right, of the East.
Of the East, right? But
okay.
NATO was designed.
People look at the history incorrectly. Like, we only see it from the Western point of view, because we were indoctrinated to believe that we were
the good guys.
We were the good guys, and they were the bad guys. And in the end, their system of government failed, and which is why we won. However, why has NATO continued to exist post 1991?
Yeah. For control.
If I'm Russia, my empire has fallen. We had an agreement with NATO that they would stay away from border nations. Now, the whole reason why the treaty at the end of World War II, that it went through half of Europe, basically, at the Iron Curtain. A lot of people believe that Berlin was in the middle. No, Berlin was far in the east side of Germany. Half of Berlin was for the west, because it was the capital city of Germany. That was it. It was what do they call it? My words escape me right now. It was basically breathing room, like you had said. That's not like that's a different concept of what Hitler was using with Lebensraum. It was a buffer zone. That's what the word I was looking for. It was a buffer zone for Russia in case Germany or the West got rowdy again. So in 1991, when the Iron Curtain fell, there was an agreement made that NATO wouldn't be aggressive by coming in and trying to convert those nations. Now, tell me something. Why the hell is Lithuania and Estonia part of NATO? What significance does those countries have in any way, shape, or form? There isn't.
But that's what I'm saying. I understand why Russia has angst against NATO for trying to turn a lot of the nations that are around them into NATO members as a way to be a buffer to Russia, right? For Western Europe to Russia. So I get where Putin and their perspective is coming from. Not that I agree with missiling up cities and killing people, but I get where he's coming from, because we see American hegemony in the West, in North America and parts of the Caribbean and South America. They pretty much did the same thing to a lot of the nations in South, Central, and the Caribbean. They invaded Grenada, right? They destabilized most of the Central American governments, right? They interfered in some South American governments, created wars and rebels. They created the Taliban.
Libya, they destroyed Iraq.
Right, destroyed Iraq.
Destroyed Afghanistan.
All this stuff, right? All over the world trying to push American hegemony, or at least undermine the former Soviet Union and undermine other nations, right? And so the United States has used that throughout their entire foreign policy for the last 100 years. And now when Russia says, no, you're not, we're going to come in there, come into Ukraine. There's an ethnic component to why we're coming there, right? Whatever their justification is, I get why they're doing it. I don't agree with it. But to some degree, I don't think it's worth the whole world going to war over that. They're not going to go to war over other things.
Well, yeah, and that's where the clusterfuck of World War One, how it ended up happening. Like, what we don't see is the news on the other side. Like, my eyes got open to this. Vlad opened my eyes to this. You remember Vlad?
Yeah.
Him being a Russian, and back in like 2012, 2013, he talked to me, and I'm familiar with the geopolitics of the area from my studies. But then he brought some things up from the Russian perspective that I never even would have thought of as a Westerner, talking about things like the Americans have essentially surrounded Russia with bases, right? NATO, like, and like I've always believed this too, is like NATO lost its purpose in 1991. The only purpose for NATO to continue to exist is to what, eventually convert Russia. So Boris Yeltsin, who was a horrible leader for Russia, he was a drunk, and he sold out to Bill Clinton. The Russians absolutely despise that man, right? They hate him. He sold them out. When Putin came in, Putin basically fixed the country in order so that people started to be able to actually have a future, right? Yeah, and actually have a future. Like, commerce started going again. Russia was able to drive its economy again. It became organized again. Like, it got together. And the narrative, I find it really interesting. And no, I don't support an invasion of another country, but we also don't understand that the Ukraine has been bombing the Donbass region for the past 6 years.
Yeah.
Right? Those people have been suffering because of the Ukraine, right? It's like how when we were told with World War II, how Hitler invaded the Czech Republic and invaded Austria. No, he didn't. He walked in. The Czech Republic, my grandmother was a Sudetenland Czech. They welcomed Hitler in because they were displaced Germans from the treaty from the Treaty of Versailles in World War One. Yeah. They welcomed them in because they were Germans. They were not Czech, and they wanted to be part of Germany. So this is such a complicated issue, and the news just persuades people it's so fake, and all they're doing is persuading the lower classes to want to go to war against Russia for something that's not going to benefit them in any way, shape, or form. They're just making it emotional, where half of these things that are happening that they're saying it's Russia, it's actually the Ukraine doing it.
Yeah.
And the and the war itself, like when they say like things like the wheat shortage, right? Oh, there's going to be a wheat shortage, right? How the hell did the West exist during the Cold War? We didn't get any wheat from Russia or from Ukraine.
Yeah.
We have the prairies. We have the bread. We have the biggest wheat growing area in the world.
Yeah, but we still do. That's why I'm like, what are they talking about wheat? Like,
well,
we're throwing away milk. We're throwing away wheat. We're throwing away all this extra stuff we have. Like, what are we talking about here?
Here's my biggest concern with this whole situation is that we have dumbass Trudeau, who's been over twice now.
Is there a problem with Trudeau there?
Yeah.
So problem with Trudeau.
No, I got a major fucking problem with him. But but in the small time that this has been, it's been about 6 weeks that this invasion has been happening. He's been to Europe twice, right? And the rhetoric that he keeps presenting to me is that we are protecting democracy. That was in his first trip. And, there was no pushback on it because it was a new thing. And, many, like you said, many people who are in Canada and have Ukrainian family members were validly concerned for the situation.
35% Ukrainian, by the way.
Yeah. I could tell from the hair, right? So, now he goes back the second time. This is where this kind of pisses me off. He goes back to the second time and he talks in front of this whole European fucking bunch of people. This is the time where Trudeau was attacked massively by a bunch of MPs from a bunch of different countries. However,
they were just the fascist ones, though.
Yeah, but you come home here and you look at the news media here, not covering any of those MP statements that were made. Like the one woman said, "You are not welcome here. You're as much of a dictator as Putin is, and you're not welcome here." I think
that was the German rep.
Yeah, that was the German, and then there was one from Slovenia or
Croatia.
Poland? Croatia.
An extreme right wing.
Yeah. We in Canada, we don't see that, and we're still force fed the fact that we need to get involved. We need to physically get involved. That the sanctions aren't enough. We've been doing sanctions, and we need to be involved. And I'm sitting back and being like, "Here, whoa, man."
I don't think Canadians are buying it. I don't hear anybody. There's no war drum being beat anywhere around me. Maybe I'm just certain kind of people who just like, I ain't fighting in no war.
Right.
But I don't hear the war drum being beat here. The media can say whatever they want. People want to go on vacation because we just came out of COVID. People are like, yo, keep the war. Can I go to Florida?
It's been busy as shit down here, by the way.
That's what I'm saying. Like nobody
it's so busy down here.
That's what I'm saying. People are like, can I start my business again? Because, terrible what's happening in Ukraine. So do I have to pay this loan back that I took out to keep my business going? Yeah, I get it. People are dying. When can I go to Disneyland? Do I need a valid?
Yeah, so I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you, Jay. I that's the same thing I see around. People are not, but why? My question is, why is the media banging the war drum? Why are you? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, the fear machine. That's what feeds the advertising. The fear machine revs people up. It's like they can't, like you said earlier, everyone said this, they can't catch us with the COVID talk anymore because we're like, we don't care.
Yeah.
Like 90% of your population is vaccinated. 90% is vaccinated. So everyone's like, we don't care. We're moving on. They're like, oh, what else can we get people to do to watch more commercials? Oh, war is coming. Look what they're doing over there. People are like, we don't care. We don't care. It's
We've even started talking about like bio labs with more viruses and shit like that too. So if,
that's fun.
If the lab is compromised, then we have our next pandemic right there.
Yeah.
And they're planning for it. So
I remember how the media said the biolabs didn't exist, and then, they might exist,
and now they do.
They did exist, but it wasn't that big of them. Yeah, there was some bad shit in there.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like, and the worst part is like people like the confirmation bias that people have is so bad. Like the media lied to me about COVID, but they're not lying to me about Ukraine.
Yeah, that's my point that I'm kind of bringing across. It's like we went through this whole 2 years, and you've now come to this realization that they lied about a lot of the stuff that we thought was true. But then we have this new cycle now with Ukraine, but the question is not there anymore, right? A lot of people are like, oh, they lied about a lot of the COVID shit. Yeah, we can all agree. Well, why aren't Canadians questioning the validity of this current news cycle?
That's why I'm not even listening to it. I can't even weigh in on it because I'm checked out.
This is from a historical perspective. This has happened before.
Yeah.
Okay. World War II, United States. 2% of Americans supported going to war in World War II, literally the day before Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
The American media was pushing and pushing and pushing. Like back then, people would go to the movies. They'd sit down in the movies. The first thing that would play is what's going on in World War II, trying to get American hearts and minds into going to the war. The American public wanted nothing to do with World War II. They were still pissed about that they got involved in World War I in the first place, right? It was Europe's war. It wasn't America's war. That was American isolationism at the time.
And Americans got involved because of a false flag.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, Pearl Harbor happened, but they knew it was coming.
Yep.
Right? They knew it was coming. Why the hell do you think those aircraft carriers weren't in the port when the Japanese attacked?
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
Had those aircraft carriers been in the port when the Japanese attacked, the west coast of the United States would have been beat. Well, we're not really, because there's a gun behind every blade of grass in the United States. They would come in, but this faith in the Americans pushing them back. But the whole thing was, it was set up, right? Right now they're feeding that news cycle, and that could be what they're doing. And the Biden administration said before, well, Russia's going to do a false flag attack to create, to give them reason to go into this war, which they didn't do. They just went to war. But you know who is an expert at false flag attacks? That's the CIA, right?
Yeah.
So,
listen, man. Good luck to them, because I don't think people have the appetite. People do not have the appetite for war right now. We just got out of Afghanistan. What? How many trillions of dollars that cost? They just got out of Iraq. What? 5 years before that? How much trillions of dollars that cost? Right? They're printing money to go to war in these places to give their corporations reasons to make more money and sell more guns. And
what if an EMP blast were to hit Canada and all these people in hospitals die because the EMP blast took out some of these hospitals and these people couldn't get the treatment, and they say it came from Russia? How will people's appetites change at that point?
Yeah. So
that's what you got to watch out for. That's what happened with Pearl Harbor.
So I can't say I have a client, I won't say who, but she's very involved into the bank, right? And I've asked her. I was very transparent. I'm like, how exposed are we to a potential war in Europe, right? And basically, what she said is the bank's only concern right now is the weakness of our power grid, right? So a cyber attack on the financial banking system won't have much impact. But she said that there is a constant, like what they're trying to figure out and what the implications can be here. And I think that, we could go on for hours and hours how this ties into the World Economic Forum and all that kind of shit. But
Klaus Schwab did say there was going to be a cyber attack to make COVID look small.
Yes, exactly. So when I kind of heard that information from her saying that the Canada and the US's power grid is the area of concern where there are holes where, say a major Russian cyber attack did occur. It's not going to occur to our financial bank. They're not going to steal our money. It's worthless, right? Canadian money is fucking worthless right now, right? What are they going to do? They're going to cripple our ability to get energy. Our energy. And when, like we said at the start of the podcast, and I'll say it right now as we finish, you always have to follow the money, right? What is the biggest commodity has gone up in price in the last 3 months compared to the last 2 years? Fucking oil, right? It's oil. When you follow the money, so now you're thinking, well, oil's gone up so much, it costs so much just to drive. Well, how do you cripple the whole economy? You take away your ability to even produce energy. And so I think where this leads to is like you said, where, we could go on a whole they'll label us a bunch of conspiracy theorists, but what we're looking at is the major implication that I think Canadian and North America has to really watch out for in this kind of a situation with this war is not us getting so much involved as, buddy boy, one of the president or the prime minister saying something so fucking dumb that, they do launch a cyber attack and they do cripple our energy system. Then what are we going to do?
Wow. That's terrible.
Remember, there was a cyber attack in the United States a year ago on an oil pipeline, and it really screwed up fuel. Do you remember that on the East
Texas,
Coast?
right? In Texas, right? Yeah.
On the East Coast. Yeah, so it was on the East Coast. I can't remember. It might have been Texas.
But that's a prime but that's a prime example of, where the hole is, right? And a lot of people were pulling their money out of the bank when the Freedom Convoy started seizing money, and I'm like, well, when I look at this objectively, when I look at this war and how it ties into Canada politics and economics, we don't even produce our own energy here because we're afraid of fucking polluting our environment for some reason.
See, this is why I'm not worried about what I'm going to do with my business if another lockdown happens or anything like that, because really the future is up in the air. It's completely unpredictable.
Yeah.
We're at the mercy of people who are pulling strings. We don't even know what they're up to.
Well, I'd say to everybody that y'all better start storing up on water.
Right now, I just got to put a bucket outside because it's fucking boring.
Exactly.
Collect your water.
On tap, right?
So I'll tell you guys what I'm doing right now is because, it's like I'm trying to be as smart as I can to move around. Like when I got out of Canada, it was like my family was like, "You're crazy. Why are you leaving right now?" I'm leaving so before before I'm not able to. Oh, that's not going to happen. And like 7 days later, travel got shut down.
Right.
Right. And then they're like, "How did you know?" I'm like, "Guys, stop watching the mainstream media." Right. And so anyway, I have a property here in Placencia that I don't want. Right. It's like a beautiful property. It's a 1/4 acre. It's like right next to the ocean on the Placencia Lagoon, which is basically the ocean because it's not really a lagoon. It's just brackish water in a bay that goes to the ocean. Brackish water is like half
Fresh, half cold.
Yeah, half fresh, half in. There's crocs in there too, so you don't swim in it. But anyway, we're moving up to a place called. We're looking to buy some land just outside of a place called Spanish Lookout. Spanish Lookout is a Mennonite community. Because I'm looking at our property here, which I kind of got influenced to buy it. My plan moving here wasn't to get it, but it was kind of cool because the beach here is ridiculous, right? So anyway, we're buying property just outside of Spanish Lookout, and that's where all the Mennonites are, and where they grow. There's food, there's land, they're the mafia in Belize, right? Which just tells you the kind of country this is. It's pretty cool. And we're gonna buy land out there, and we're gonna start to grow because, like, I don't want to be near the ocean because the land here is useless. I want to be in a spot where I can grow my own freaking food and be close to the people who produce it, right? Because shit hits the fan. You got to store. Last place I'd want to be is in a city. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Last place I ever want to be actually is in a city, but anyway.
Yeah, but I mean. Let's wrap this shit up anyway because it's been over 2 hours. But I think it was a great conversation. So thank you guys all for joining me for that. But I mean, to wrap this whole discussion up, I think as doom and gloom as a lot of this stuff is, I think we still have to remember that there is some fucking hope in there, and I think the hope that is there is the ability to have conversations like this and still be able to think freely, put it that way. Where, we do have all this media, trying to manipulate or whatever. I think the most important thing we can take away from all of this is that, like Jay said, it is coming. And right, it is coming, and you can either stress out about it or you can just keep using intellectual conversations like we're having right here. And you never know who's listening, and you can always, like Linda said, I'm tired of trying to talk to people, right? Same with me. I got tired of trying to talk to people and convince people. Like, if we're trying to always convince people that what's going on, there's billions of fucking people. We're never gonna be able to do that. But the most important part is, like we said, to be able to freely think and to be able to put conversations like this out there, because I think that's the only way that you're gonna be able to fight this thing. You know what I mean? But anyway, thank all you fucking guys for doing this shit.
Thank you, Ashton.
Appreciate it.
It was a pleasure meeting you.
Nice meeting you guys.
Chris, it's always great.
Linda. I feel like we should have let Linda talk about the World Economic Forum a little longer. She really looked like
I don't have that kind of time.
No, we'll do it. We'll do it again. We'll do it again. But thank you guys for it.
Jason, great to see you, brother.
See you as always, my friend.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for watching. Please do me a favor. Click the like below. Share on YouTube. Share on Instagram. Share on Facebook. Spread the word so I can keep creating more content for you and keep providing you with a great podcast experience. Peace out.